there's this piece in, I'm not going to go through all of this really, but a Wall Street Journal opinion piece. You know why they put it in the opinion section, right? Mm-hmm. Because then they can allow any type of BS be expressed without having to be held to normal journalistic standards.
Although the biases in their just straight news articles also tends to creep out for the Wall Street Journal, but then the opinion pages are like...
This just gives you much more leeway.
Vile garbage.
Now... And there's a reason why it's in the Wall Street Journal opinion section, too. This is David Rivkin and James Taranto. They're both like right-wing apparatchiks, as far as I can tell. And they've basically did an interview with Alito. Let's be clear. This was maybe them pitching this to Alito, Alito pitching it to them, but they're all friends, they're allies. How many different things have showed up in the Wall Street Journal that I think there was like the Wall Street Journal reported back in 2012 when Alito was very mad about John Roberts sort of forging a deal on the ACA. And somehow the Wall Street Journal knew the inner workings of what was going on there.
It's so odd.
So odd. In fact, I think it was the Wall Street Journal. It was Politico got the Dobbs, but
leak.
A couple of weeks before the Dobbs leak, and maybe it's a month, I can't remember, there was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal talking about this stuff. It's weird. It's really weird. Well,
great reporters over there.
I'm sure they're really on top of it. In the editorial section. Anyway, I don't know. What do you do? And Alito said, I marvel at all the nonsense that has been written about me in the last year.
Oh, he marvels at it?
He marvels at it.
They're just like National Review writers. It's so irritating.
In the face of a political onslaught, he observes, quote, the traditional idea about how judges and justices should behave is they should be mute, I should say, and leave it to others, especially, quote, the organized bar, to defend them.
Wait, they should be mute? He's saying this in an interview?
Yeah. Oh, well, but he's saying why he's speaking out now.
Right.
But that's just not happening. And so at a certain point, I've said to myself, nobody else is going to do this, so I have to defend myself. He went on to not say he was responsible for the leak that apparently they cannot find of his decision that tried to lock in Kavanaugh, but whatever.
But they didn't investigate any of the justices. They're above that.
He was appointed in early 2006 and is now the second most senior associate justice. He has emerged as an important voice on the court with a distinctive interpretive method that is rooted in originalism and textualism. Remember that line, folks, because a distinctive interpretive method basically turns out to be, if it is in the text or if it was part of the original intent and I don't agree with it, I'm going to interpret it in a distinct way that is maybe diametrically opposed to what it says. Goes on to say the simplest, talks about Thomas being great. He talks about all his allies there being great.
That's awesome.
In the end, incidentally, Rivkin, one of the guys who wrote it, has represents appellates in a case that I think is in front of the. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and he was a DOJ.
More U.S., yeah.
And he was a DOJ and Office of Legal Counsel from Reagan and H.W. Bush as well.
Worked with John Roberts.
Yeah.
Justice Alito says he voluntarily follows disclosure statutes that apply to lower court judges and executive branch officials. So do the other justices. Now, of course,
no, they don't.
Voluntarily follows those disclosure statutes by determining when he wants to.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah, the point is that no, they don't follow it. That's what has been leaked out, is that there have been glaring omissions, particularly by Clarence Thomas, on these disclosure forms.
I am a Supreme Court justice, and so I rule what you don't know won't hurt you.
Thank you.
But he notes that, quote, Congress did not create the Supreme Court. The Constitution did. I can verify that.
True.
True. I know this is a controversial view, but I'm willing to say it, he says. No provision in the Constitution gives them the authority to regulate the Supreme Court, period. Now, here's the thing about the Constitution is, and this was a really smart thing that the guys who wrote it did. They would number different sections. So you could go to different sections that refer to different parts of the government.
Yeah.
It's almost like,
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
They were smart.
You don't have to like word search.
No,
within
it's
the
like
Constitution.
They didn't have Control F.
it's like chapters, right? Yeah, it's like chapters, but even more organized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you Google in Constitution, you want to get the United States one.
good note.
And you go down.
Wait, there's more than one. That's not. We should
Article
copyright
1 and go. Oh yeah, here's perfect. Okay, Section 2. Okay, here it is. The judicial power shall extend in all cases of law or equity arising in this country. The laws of the United States, treaties made, shall be under the authority. Okay, that is in all cases affecting, and it basically says like the jurisdiction. All cases, admiralty, maritime jurisdiction to controversies which the United States shall be a party to controversies between two states, between a state and citizens and other states, between citizens and different states, between citizens of the same state, claiming lands under grants or different. It's talking about jurisdiction. In all cases affecting ambassadors and other public ministers and consuls, and in those states, those in which a state shall be the party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all our cases mentioned before, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and to fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and the trial shall be held in the state where the said crimes have been committed, but when not connected with any state, the trial shall have such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. So things like jurisdiction and any other sort of like auspices under, if you're going to hear these cases or those cases, you're going to do it under these circumstances. So if Congress, Section 2, decides that the Supreme Court's not going to have any appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and to fact, they do so only under the context of what regulations as the Congress shall make.
And they've made those regulations too. I mean, the reason that there are 9 Supreme Court justices is because of Congress. They fund the Supreme Court as well. Like that is well within their rights to provide them with ethics standards, because the structure of the Supreme Court is determined statutorily by the legislature. So this originalist freak is wrong about some of the most basic roles that are ascribed to the legislature as it relates to the court.
This should be a constitutional crisis, and the Democrats should meet it like it. And we need to see more than just like, I don't know, like how can a Supreme Court guy say this like without it being a huge problem for the country? Because who else does regulate then, you freak? Like nobody.
Can Dick Durbin get off his ass?
Yeah, like
I mean,
Well, they
for
have
real.
passed in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Has that passed yet? I think it has cleared committee, but I don't know if it's actually going to get to the floor. At least some ethics bills.
Was that the Sheldon Whitehouse thing?
yeah.
Alito's right if nothing comes of this. Like it's not because of the Constitution, it's because there's nothing actually that does control the Supreme Court, and it's whether that's some sort of like.
Congress has the ability also to impeach a justice.
Yeah.
Do it.
They should.
This sort of thing should be impeachable. I don't know. Like, I feel like in other times we would have treated the Supreme Court like with a lot more disdain than this. I don't know how we've got to this point where they're able to just gallop like this.
The public does.
Right.
I mean, the historic low trust, but that is not translating whatsoever in terms of like how the Senate is approaching this.
And he says, no floor vote yet on that White House bill.
I mean,
He's asked, do the other justices agree? I don't know that any of my colleagues have spoken out about it publicly, so I don't think I should say, but I think it's something we have all thought about.
Evidently.
I'm happy about the White House thing. I just do think that like the Judiciary Committee has to be like, we shouldn't have just had one day long hearing about Clarence Thomas and just been like, all right. I mean,
The House should be doing more of that without a doubt, like
they
an
can't,
investigative
and they're not
thing.
going to. That's
But obviously it's
Republicans.
not going to happen because of the Republicans.
Yeah.
Justice Alito wonders if outright defiance may be in the offing for the first time since the aftermath of Brown v. Education. Now, I want you people to understand. This was written this weekend, right? Okay. Bradley, I'm going to give you time. Google Alabama Supreme Court congressional districts. Justice Alito wonders if outright defiance may be in the offing for the first time since the aftermath of Brown v. Board of Education. If we're viewed as illegitimate, then disregard our decisions becomes more acceptable and more popular. So you can have a revival of the massive resistance that occurred in the South after Brown. The idea that saying that the justices need to be subject to some type of ethics is undercutting the power of the Supreme Court when this shit is going on as we speak.
Yeah.
Alabama Republicans, despite Supreme Court ruling, reject call for a second majority black House district. The idea that he's not mentioning that, or that he's sort of vaguely threatening, like, if you come after me for ethics, people in the South might decide that they're not subject to the Voting Rights Act. So,
Yeah.
Here's Mark Joseph Stern on Mehdi Hassan's show.
Yeah.
Talking about Alito's assertion.
I mean, the Constitution literally uses the word regulation to say what Congress can do to the Supreme Court, and yet Alito claims that no provision gives Congress the authority to regulate his court. It cannot be squared. The guy is just lying. And I think what Steve is trying to say there and making such an important point is that for most of our country's history, Congress did regulate the Supreme Court. You know, it added or subtracted seats. It forced the court to hear certain cases and took away the power to hear other cases. It moved forward certain hearings for totally partisan purposes. I'm not saying all of that is good, but it shows that embedded in the Constitution is this idea of checks and balances among all three branches. Alito seems to think that the Supreme Court sits atop the government and simply doles out checks and balances to the other two branches. That is not how it works. If Congress wanted to turn Sam Alito's chambers into a transgender health clinic, it would have full constitutional authority to do so. And I think deep down he knows that and he's scared of it. And that's why he wants to go out and tell the American people the opposite.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. If he thought that he had a legal basis, he would not be out politicking right now about it.
100%. And it shows how scared they are, which is amazing.
Good.
Good. I want them to be. I want them to be scared because they don't get to, again, be the high priests of the United States in what is ostensibly a democratic republic. There has to be some sort of oversight. There has to be.
I mean, if there's not a major, if the Supreme Court looks like it does, 30 years from now, it would be a massive failure, and like the world would be a really dark place, I think.